The courtroom laughed. Not loudly, not openly. But enough. Enough for her to hear it. Enough for her to feel it. Enough to make an 8-year-old girl standing alone at the witness stand realize that nobody in this room believed she mattered. She barely reached the microphone. Her shoes didn't touch the floor as she sat. They dangled, swinging slightly above the polished wood. Someone in the back whispered something. A man near the aisle smirked. Another chuckled. The sound spread in quiet ripples. The judge noticed. He lifted his gavel. Order. The laughter died instantly. But the damage was done. The girl heard it. She felt it. And across the courtroom, the most dangerous man in the city smiled. Nikolai Vetrov did not laugh. He didn't need to. His confidence was heavier than laughter. He sat at the defense table in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, one hand resting calmly on the polished surface, the other adjusting the silver cufflink at his wrist. His dark hair was combed back neatly, his posture relaxed. Untouchable. At 46, Nikolai Vetrov was more than a man. He was power. He owned shipping routes, construction companies, security firms. Officially. Unofficially, he owned far more. People disappeared around him. Evidence vanished. Witnesses forgot. Prosecutors failed. For 12 years, he had walked into courtrooms like this one and walked out free. Today was supposed to be no different. He looked at the girl again. Small. Fragile. Irrelevant. He leaned slightly toward his attorney and whispered something. The attorney smiled. The judge cleared his throat and looked down at the witness list. State your name. The girl swallowed. Her voice was quiet. Elena Petrova. The courtroom remained silent now, but the silence wasn't respect. It was skepticism. The judge adjusted his glasses. Elena, do you understand why you are here today? She nodded. Yes. Her voice was small, but it didn't shake. Not yet. The prosecutor stood slowly. A tall woman in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, precise. She approached the witness stand carefully, like someone approaching something fragile but important. Elena, she said gently, can you tell the court where you were on the night of March 17th? Elena looked down at her hands. They were folded tightly in her lap. She remembered everything. The cold. The sound. The voice. She pointed. At the warehouse. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Nikolai didn't move. But inside something tightened. Just slightly. The prosecutor continued. Why were you there? Elena hesitated. Not because she didn't know. Because she knew too well. I was waiting for my papa. The words landed heavier than they should have. Her father. Missing. Presumed dead. A former accountant in one of Nikolai's companies. A man who had started asking questions. A man who had disappeared 3 weeks ago. Nikolai's expression did not change. But his eyes sharpened. The prosecutor spoke carefully. Did you see anyone that night? Elena nodded slowly. Yes. Who? She lifted her eyes. And pointed. Directly at Nikolai Vetrov. The courtroom shifted. The judge leaned forward slightly. The defense attorney stood immediately. Objection, the witness is a child. Overruled, the judge said firmly. He looked at Elena. Elena, are you certain? She nodded again. Yes. The defense attorney walked toward her, smiling in a way that wasn't kind. Elena, he said softly, you're very brave, but sometimes children can misunderstand things. It was dark, wasn't it? Yes. And you were far away. She didn't answer immediately. He pressed gently. You might have been mistaken. Elena looked at him. Then she shook her head. No. The attorney smiled slightly wider. And how can you be so sure? Elena's fingers tightened. Because she remembered his voice. The exact words. The exact tone. The exact moment everything changed. She looked at Nikolai. He met her gaze calmly. Cold. Unbothered. But inside something was shifting now. A slow, quiet unease. Because he was starting to remember something too. Something he had dismissed. Something small. Something he thought didn't matter. The defense attorney spread his hands. Elena, did you actually see my client do anything wrong? She hesitated. The courtroom leaned in. She spoke. I heard him. A pause. The attorney tilted his head. You heard him. She nodded. What did you hear? Elena's throat tightened. She remembered the shadows. The men. Her father. And Nikolai. Standing there. Speaking. Not in English. In Russian. The defense attorney smiled. And what did he say? Elena opened her mouth. Then stopped. The courtroom waited. The judge waited. Nikolai watched her carefully now. Something cold was forming behind his calm expression. A quiet realization. Because he remembered that night. He remembered speaking freely. Because he believed no one could understand him. He remembered saying things no witness could repeat. Because there were no witnesses. He was certain of that. Elena lifted her head. Her eyes met his. And then she spoke. In perfect Russian. Ubeya deviteya esyeri. Chetiloteya lani kalogedea inya inakratkoi deute. The judge froze. The prosecutor froze. The defense attorney froze. Several people in the courtroom didn't understand the words. But Nikolai did. And for the first time in 12 years. His confidence cracked. Just slightly. Because those were his words. Exact. Precise. Impossible. He stared at her. Really stared. And suddenly, he remembered the shadow. The small shape near the doorway. The movement he had dismissed. The possibility he never considered. He felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not yet. But close. The judge leaned forward slowly. Elena, he said carefully, can you translate what you just said? She nodded. He said, make sure the bodies are never found. The courtroom erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Shock. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. But the damage was done. The words were out. And Nikolai knew. He had made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Because he had believed no one understood. But someone had. Someone small. Someone invisible. Someone he never saw. And now she was sitting in front of him. Telling everyone. He kept his face calm. But inside, for the first time in years, he felt something break. Not panic. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Because this child knew something she was never supposed to know. And suddenly, he wasn't as untouchable as he thought. The courtroom did not breathe. Not fully. Not normally. It existed in a suspended state, the kind that happens when reality shifts and everyone feels it at the same time, but no one knows what comes next. Nikolai Vetrov did not move. But inside, calculations were happening at terrifying speed. He had survived 12 years because he never panicked. Panic was weakness. Panic made men careless. He would not be careless. He studied the girl carefully now. Elena Petrova, 8 years old. Small shoulders, thin arms, dark hair pulled back unevenly like someone else had done it for her in a hurry. But her eyes did not belong to a child. They belonged to someone who had seen something that could not be unseen. The judge leaned forward. "Elena," he said slowly, carefully, "how do you know Russian?" The question hung in the air. Important. Dangerous. Because if she couldn't answer it convincingly, everything she said could be dismissed. The defense attorney was already preparing his attack. Children imagined things. Children misunderstood things. Children were unreliable. That was the foundation he would destroy her with. Elena answered quietly. "My papa taught me." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Why did he teach you Russian?" Elena hesitated. Her fingers tightened together again. Because this part mattered. This part was why she was here. He said it was important. The defense attorney moved quickly. Important for what? Elena looked at him. Then she said the one thing Nikolai never expected her to say. He said the men at his work spoke Russian when they didn't want people to understand. The courtroom shifted again. The defense attorney smiled calmly, but there was tension now in his jaw. "And you understood perfectly, at 8 years old?" Elena nodded. "Yes." He walked closer. Gentle. Controlled. Predatory. "Elena, Russian is a very difficult language. Many adults struggle with it. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked at Nikolai. He held her gaze. Cold. Warning. Controlled. But she had seen him before. Not like this. Not in a suit. Not in the open. She had seen him in the shadows. She spoke again. This time in Russian. Clear. Precise. Unmistakable. Ancestral. Cheteo emoi kratkoi ateyetse beyeru lpera belye emoi kratkoi. The defense attorney froze. The judge leaned forward sharply. The prosecutor's eyes widened. Nikolai felt it. That cold, precise sensation. Fear. Because again. Those were his exact words. The judge spoke carefully. Translate. Elena did not break eye contact with Nikolai. He said my father was a problem. A murmur spread across the courtroom. Nikolai's attorney stepped in immediately. Objection, this is interpretation without context. But the judge did not respond right away. He was watching Nikolai now. Because he had seen something. Just a flicker. Just a fracture. But it was there. The prosecutor approached slowly. Elena, how close were you when you heard this? Elena swallowed. She remembered the cold air. The metal smell. The darkness. I was hiding behind the door. The defense attorney spoke sharply. And why were you hiding? She answered simply. I was scared. The simplicity of it hit harder than anything else she'd said. Because fear was honest. Fear was real. Fear was hard to fake. The defense attorney changed tactics. Vast. Aggressive. Elena, is it possible someone told you what to say today? She shook her head. No. Did the police tell you what to say? No. The prosecutor. No. He stepped closer. Lowered his voice. Did anyone help you remember? Elena hesitated. And for the first time, Nikolai felt hope. A small crack. A possible weakness. Because hesitation meant uncertainty. And uncertainty meant doubt. And and doubt meant survival. But then Alina said something that erased that hope instantly. I never forgot. The words landed like a verdict. Because truth didn't need help. Truth didn't need rehearsal. Truth stayed. The prosecutor stepped forward again. Alina, what else did you hear? The courtroom leaned in. Waiting. Alina spoke quietly. He said. She switched to Russian again. Ubeje dviteje esjeri. Chetodejeve ocheka inicheyege o inyeve ideje ela. Nikolai's blood turned cold. The judge's voice came slowly. Translate. Alina answered. He said, make sure the girl didn't see anything. Silence. Absolute. Total. Silence. And in that silence, Nikolai understood something. He understood the mistake. The real mistake. It wasn't speaking Russian. It wasn't the warehouse. It wasn't the witnesses. It was her. Because he remembered now. The small shape behind the door. The movement. The possibility. He had asked a question that night. A careless question. A fatal question. Did the girl see anything? And his men had answered. No. They had been wrong. The defense attorney was speaking again, but Nikolai barely heard him. Because something else was happening now. Something worse. He was remembering her father. Not as a person. As a problem. An inconvenience. A loose end. And loose ends had to be removed. That was the rule. That was survival. But now, the loose end was here. Sitting 10 feet away. Destroying everything. The judge leaned forward. Alina, why didn't you tell anyone sooner? This was the most dangerous question of all. Because it would reveal everything. Or nothing. Alina answered quietly. I tried. The prosecutor frowned slightly. What do you mean? Alina's voice trembled now. Not from fear. From memory. I told the police. A pause. They didn't believe me. Another pause. I told another man. The prosecutor leaned closer. Who? Alina pointed. Not at Nikolai. At someone else. A man sitting in the second row. Wearing a gray suit. Watching quietly. The courtroom turned. The man froze. The prosecutor spoke sharply. State your name. The man swallowed. Sergei Antonov. The name hit Nikolai like ice. Because Sergei Antonov wasn't just anyone. He was one of Nikolai's men. Or he had been. Until 2 months ago. Until he disappeared. Until now. Sergei stood slowly. His face pale. Alina told me, he said quietly. The prosecutor stared. And what did you do? Sergei looked at Nikolai. Fear. Real fear. I went to the police. The prosecutor frowned. And... Sergei hesitated. They told me there wasn't enough evidence. The courtroom shifted. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about Nikolai. This was bigger. Much bigger. Alina spoke again. Quietly. They were scared. The words landed heavily. Because everyone understood what she meant. The judge leaned back slowly. And for the first time, he looked at Nikolai not as a defendant, but as something else. Something dangerous. Something real. And Nikolai realized something too. This wasn't going away. This wasn't controllable. This wasn't survivable. Because the one witness he never saw had seen everything. And now, everyone believed her. Nikolai Vetrov had built his entire life on one simple truth. Control was survival. Control of information. Control of people. Control of fear. Lose control and everything collapsed. He sat perfectly still at the defense table, his face calm, unreadable. But inside, the architecture of his certainty was cracking. Not collapsing. Not yet. But cracking. He watched Sergei Antonov carefully. Sergei had been loyal once, useful, invisible. And now he was standing in open court. Speaking. Breathing. Existing. That alone was wrong. Sergei was supposed to be gone. Not dead. But gone. Removed, silenced, managed. Nikolai's mind moved quickly, retracing decisions, conversations, orders. He remembered the night he learned Sergei had gone to the police. He remembered the solution. Clean. Quiet. Permanent. Or so he thought. And suddenly, something colder than fear touched him. Uncertainty. The prosecutor stepped closer to Sergei. "You went to the police," she said. "When exactly?" Sergei swallowed. 2 days after the warehouse. "And you told them what Alina told you?" "Yes." "And what happened?" Sergei hesitated. His eyes flicked, just briefly toward Nikolai. Then away. "They told me to forget it." A murmur spread. The prosecutor narrowed her eyes. "Who told you?" Sergei's hands trembled slightly now. "Detective Morozov." The name landed like a dropped knife. Because everyone in that courtroom knew Detective Morozov. 20 years on the force. Decorated. Respected. Trusted. The prosecutor turned slowly. Detective Morozov is listed as one of the officers who investigated Alina's father's disappearance. Sergei nodded. "Yes." The prosecutor's voice sharpened. "And you're saying he dismissed a direct witness statement?" Sergei hesitated again. Then said the one thing that changed everything. "He told me some people were too powerful to accuse." The courtroom erupted again. The judge slammed his gavel repeatedly. Order. But the damage was already spreading. Because now the rot had a shape. And it wasn't small. Nikolai remained still. But inside, a realization was forming. A terrible one. Because this was no longer just about Alina. This was about exposure. Systemic. Uncontrolled. Permanent. The judge turned to Alina again. His voice quieter now. Gentler. "Alina, when was the last time you saw your father?" Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. "The warehouse." A pause. "He told me to hide." Her voice trembled slightly now. "He said, no matter what happened, don't come out." The prosecutor spoke carefully. "Did you listen?" Alina nodded. "Yes." "And what happened next?" Alina's fingers tightened. "I heard them arguing." Her breathing slowed. "I heard my papa say he wouldn't do it." Silence. "I heard the man say he didn't have a choice." Her eyes moved. To Nikolai. And then. She stopped. The prosecutor whispered gently. "It's okay." Alina finished. "I heard the gun." The sound of it seemed to echo in the silence. Even now. Even here. Nikolai felt something unexpected then. Not guilt. Not remorse. Recognition. Because he remembered that moment too. Not as trauma. As procedure. Necessary. Efficient. Finished. Or so he believed. The judge leaned back slowly. His face pale. Because he understood now what everyone understood. This child had not just heard words. She had heard murder. And then, the twist revealed itself. Not in Alina. Not in Sergei. In Nikolai. Because as he sat there, something else surfaced in his memory. Something small. Something he had dismissed completely. After the gunshot, after the silence, he remembered asking Sergei a question. A simple question. Is there anyone else? And Sergei had answered immediately. No. Nikolai had trusted that answer. Acted on that answer. Built his survival on that answer. But now Sergei was here. Alive. Talking. Which meant only one thing. Sergei had lied. Not then. But later. Sergei hadn't just failed to eliminate a witness. He had protected one. Alina. The realization hit Nikolai with crushing clarity. Sergei hadn't been weak. He had been disloyal. For months. Maybe longer. And suddenly, Nikolai understood something worse than exposure. He had been betrayed from inside. The one thing he never allowed. The one thing he never survived. He looked at Sergei. Really looked at him. And for the first time, Sergei didn't look afraid. He looked free. Because the truth was already spoken. The prosecutor stepped forward one final time. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady, the witness has placed the defendant at the scene, speaking directly about the disposal of bodies and suppressing witnesses. We move that the court recognize this testimony as material and admissible. The judge didn't respond immediately. He looked at Alina. Small. Fragile. Unbreakable. Then he looked at Nikolai. Powerful. Controlled. But no longer untouchable. Because power only existed as long as people believed in it. And belief was breaking. Slowly. Irreversibly. The judge spoke. This court will recess for review of testimony. He struck the gavel. But Nikolai didn't move. Because for the first time in 12 years, he didn't know what would happen next. Not because of the court. Not because of the law. But because of something far more dangerous. Uncertainty. As officers approached him, he finally looked at Alina one last time. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't triumphant. She was just watching. The way witnesses watch truth finally surface. And in that moment, Nikolai Vetrov understood the real twist. It wasn't that an 8-year-old girl had destroyed him. It was that he had destroyed himself the moment he believed she didn't matter. Because the most dangerous witnesses were never the loudest. They were the ones no one saw. No one heard. No one believed. Until it was too late. And as the courtroom emptied, and the illusion of his control dissolved piece by piece. For the first time since the empire began, Nikolai Vetrov was no longer certain he would walk out free. Let be real. If she was your daughter, would you let her testify? Be honest. Would you have testified at 8 years old?